Part 51. Xuan Huaifeng got with a gunshot then having an operation. Bai Xuelan dashed out of the wing, regardless of whether the gangsters had been cleared or not. He rushed downstairs like crazy and asked loudly, "Song Ren. What happened?" Song Ren's voice came from the other side. "Chief." Several stubborn Zhou Huo's subordinates still huddled in the blind corner of the hall and returned fire, and a few bullets rustled past Bai Xuelan. Bai Xuelan rushed to the gate of Jinghua building, and the scene that made his eyes split suddenly jumped into view. There was a car parked in front of the door was still open. Xuan Huaifeng fell not far from the door, holding the Browning in his hand, and the uniform was stained with blood. Bai Xuelan screamed, "Huaifeng!" He rushed over and hugged Xuan Huaifeng in his arms, shaking desperately, "Huaifeng! Huaifeng!" Song Ren said anxiously from the side, "Chief, this can't be done. Adjutant Xuan was shot. Come on, go to the hospital." Bai Xuelan finally woke up, took Xuan Huaifeng into the car, slammed his fist on the door, and ordered, "Drive. Drive. It's a little late. I'll skin you." Song Ren was worried that someone would harm Bai Xuelan while he was in the chaos, so he hurriedly followed the car with a gun. The driver took Xuan Huaifeng to the Jinghua building and encountered a shootout. He was so frightened that he was scolded by Bai Xuelan. He hurriedly started the engine and asked tremblingly, "Chief, which hospital are you going to?" Although Bai Xuelan's mind was messy, he still knew this, and he said without hesitation, "It's best to go to a German hospital with a gunshot wound." "Go to the German hospital quickly. You slam the accelerator hard for me." The bullet hit Xuan Huaifeng's abdomen, and blood continued from the military uniform. Bai Xuelan unbuttoned his jacket. The white shirt inside was dyed bright red, and the blood was still gurgling out. Bai Xuelan was almost insane. Song Ren said, "Chief, you must stop the bleeding first." Bai Xuelan tore off a piece of his sleeve and pressed it on Xuan Huaifeng's wound. Song Ren looked at his appearance. It was too gentle, so he could only whisper, "Chief, you have to press down a little bit to cover the wound." Bai Xuelan nodded, his face almost twisted, his eyebrows twisted, his teeth clenched and apply pressure to the wound. Xuan Huaifeng let out a whimper, and woke up in pain. Seeing him open his eyes, Bai Xuelan barely suppressed the trembling feeling in his throat, and asked very gently, "Huaifeng, hold on. I'll take you to the hospital. How do you feel?" Xuan Huaifeng was in a trance, moved his gaze a bit, and said weakly, "It's nothing, it just hurts a bit." Bai Xuelan coaxed, "Don't be afraid. I'll give you morphine when you arrive to the German hospital, and the pain will stop immediately." The driver heard Bai Xuelan's voice. The intimidation. Knowing that if I didn't get to the hospital in time, I would not be able to save my life, so I drove rampantly on the main road, occasionally rubbing the edge of the rickshaw or the hawker's fruit frame, and the car slammed into a setback, pulling Xuan Huaifeng's wound. Xuan Huaifeng severe pain, frowning and making a soft pain. Bai Xuelan was heartbroken and scolded the driver, "Be careful," while holding the baby in his arms tightly. Xuan Huaifeng lay in his arms, staring blankly at Bai Xuelan above his head. With a wry smile, and whispered, "I'm really sorry for you." Bai Xuelan asked, "Why are you sorry for me?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "In the past, you were shot. When you said it hurt, I always suspected that you lied to me. Now I know what it's like." The car stopped at the entrance of the German hospital, and Bai Xuelan ran in with Xuan Huaifeng in his arms. As soon as the identity of the head of the customs was revealed, the hospital immediately paid attention to it. Soon 2 German doctors trotted over with a few nurses. Bai Xuelan refused to hand them over, only asked them to lead the way and personally carried Xuan Huaifeng into the house. In the operating room, on the operating table, he said anxiously. You must give him morphine. He can't help but feel pain. The German doctor knew his identity. Although morphine was precious, it was still affordable. He nodded and agreed, and invited him out. Bai Xuelan said, No, I'll accompany him. The German doctor said in plain Chinese words, No, you, here, I am not good at work. You hinder me and save the patient. Song Ren rolled his eyes and said, Fuck you, we can't hinder you. Before he finished speaking, Bai Xuelan said, Okay, we won't hinder you, you must save him. He led Song Ren out, and when he reached the door, he couldn't help it. He turned around and walked over again, and told him again, You must give him morphine. I know that this thing is in short supply now, so you often need to save it. If you dare to save it him. Don't blame me for being rude. He took out the gun, waved in front of the doctors and nurses, his eyes flashed fiercely, and he said word by word, Not do, you're welcome, you are angry. Understand? Bai Xuelan reached the corridor and walked around like a mad lion. After walking around a dozen times, he stopped in front of Song Ren, stared at him fiercely, and asked with gritted teeth, Speak. What's going on? Song Ren's face was also ugly, and he shook his head and said, I don't know either. But I just know that the adjutant Xuan's car suddenly arrived at the gate of the Jinghua building, just a few times ago. The bastards of Zhou Huo fled to the door and hit the adjutant Xuan and got off the car. They saw the military uniform on the adjutant Xuan's body, thought it was also to surround and suppress them. So they shot at the adjutant Xuan on the spot, and killed the two guards next to the adjutant Xuan. He looked at Bai Xuelan, the usual smiling face, the calm expression is gone. Only covered with a thick layer of heartache and anxiety, like a knife has slashed his heart. Song Ren sighed and comforted, Chief, Adjutant Xuan must be lucky. After all, you have the foresight to teach Adjutant Xuan to use a gun a while ago. I just saw the corpses of the gangsters in front of the car. He was killed before he could pick up a guard gun. These two guns, don't ask, were fired by Adjutant Xuan. His marksmanship is very accurate. If he was not smart enough to fight back quickly, he would have killed the two gangsters. When we got to the gate, it was already. Bai Xuelan looked at the closed operating room, as if his soul was locked inside. Reluctantly stood for a while, really couldn't bear the torment. Turned his head and walked to the corner again, looked coldly at the driver who was driving the car for Xuan Huaifeng, and asked with a sullen face. Adjutant Xuan is not going to the Jiangnan restaurant today. Does he want to eat? Why did he come to Jinghua building? Those eyes were almost choked by people. The driver didn't dare to look at him. He bowed his head and stammered, Yes, it was the Adjutant Xuan who said that he went back to the General Administration of Customs. And then went back to the Customs. The General Administration of Customs said the Jinghua building again. Bai Xuelan asked, Jinghua building is firing, are you deaf? Don't know how to take a detour? He raised his hand and slapped him on the face. The driver was beaten halfway up against the wall, covering his face and crying as he explained, I also said that I heard movement in the Jinghua building. I wanted to stop and check the situation. Yes. It was Adjutant Xuan who heard what seemed to be gunshots. He is in a hurry, saying that the commander is in danger, and if I don't obey the order, I will be killed. Bai Xuelan's heart was twisted like a knife, his feet were like stepping on cotton. And he didn't even have the strength to get angry. He leaned back in the sky, closed his eyes, and said weakly, Let's go. The driver quickly shrank his neck and walked away. Bai Xuelan pressed his forehead against the cold wall, stuffed his fist into his mouth and bit his hard, without moving for a long time. Bai Xuelan was in the corridor of the hospital. Not knowing how sticky the time was, he kept turning his face to the wall. A fear hidden in his heart. He didn't dare to look at his watch, and he didn't dare to look back to the operating room door. Every once in a while, a scene seems to flash in front of me. The door of the operating room opens, and the doctors come out with their heads bowed, like a mourning concubine. Bai Xuelan's heart twitched, and he quickly dismissed the imagination of this scene, like putting a big bucket of cold water was splashed on the newly lit fire. Whoa! The fire is out! But the big bucket of cold water seemed to still contain crushed ice. Although the ominous flames were extinguished, the remaining debris on the ground was bone-chilling. For no reason, Bai Xuelan suddenly remembered the stupid thing Xuan Huaifeng had done when he first arrived at the Bai mansion. He drank the smoked soil water and fell into Bai Xuelan's arms. And he was finally rescued that time. What about this time? How is it today? Also, didn't he ever get angry with those words? He also had a quarrel with himself in Fengshan Mountain. Just because of that sentence, who died at the hands of whomever. He is so sensitive. Does he feel the sad omen of fate? Could it be that he really will die at my hands? What the hell am I doing? Saying those ominous words. Bai Xuelan can't wait to slap himself twice. He is afraid that many things he has been doing will lead Xuan Huaifeng to death. Maybe it is. If he didn't force Xuan Huaifeng to come to his side, Xuan Huaifeng would not drink smoked soil water. If he didn't force Xuan Huaifeng to be an adjutant, and if he didn't offend so many people, Xuan Huaifeng would not be shot. Bai Xuelan stood there, as if standing in the wind and waves. Suddenly, some movement behind him suddenly affected his nerves. He turned around, his jet-black pupils staring at the door of the operating room. But the door didn't move at all. Instead, it was the other end of the corridor, with the sound of messy footsteps rushing in. It looks like the news has gotten out. Mrs. Nian walked too fast, as if she was about to fall at any time, and was grabbed by the people around her. When she saw Bai Xuelan, she seemed to have retrieved a few strands of the frightened soul. She raised her head to face Bai Xuelan, trembling. She pursed her lips and asked, "Chief Bai, where is Huaifeng?" What about him? Bai Xuelan had always been fearless, but now he avoided a woman's gaze, lowered his eyes and said, "He is having an operation. And he's been shot in the abdomen." The voice before falling, Xuan Dian let out a groan, and fell softly with her eyes closed. Mrs. Nian. Several people quickly supported her and let her sit on a bench in the corridor. She didn't come alone. The person who accompanied her was actually Bai Yunfei. Seeing that she fainted in a hurry, there was a circle of people. Some people called for the doctor, and some people pinched them. Bai Yunfei hurried to go ask the nurse for a glass of warm water. When he came back with the cup, Xuan Dian was pinched and she slowly woke up. She opened her eyes, looked at them absent-mindedly, and only asked, "Did he come out?" Bai Xuelan guessed that she didn't know that she had only fainted for a while, for fear that Xuan Huaifeng had already undergone surgery, and replied, "No. I'm afraid it will come out after a while. Mrs. Nian, you must take care of your health, otherwise Huaifeng will know, and you will have to worry more." Xuan Dian nodded, and said with an air of gossamer, "I'm not in the way." The blood rushed to my head. After looking around again, she hesitated for a while, and asked Zhang Ma, "Why isn't your master here yet? Maybe this meeting is coming." "Miss, don't scare me. You just do this. My life is going to be scared. You still have a child in your stomach. If there is something wrong, how can I live?" Knowing that she was panicking, Xuan Dian wanted to babble endlessly, so she stopped her and said, "I see, you can rest for a while. This is a hospital. And it's not good to arguing with the doctor for an operation. We are here and wait." After she finished speaking, she closed her eyes, leaned halfway on the chair, and waited silently as if she had endured something. When Zhang Mama heard that she would quarrel with the doctor, she was so frightened that she did not dare to make a sound. So she stood uneasily beside Xuan Dian. Bai Yunfei arrived at Bai Xuelan's side at this moment, and asked in a low voice, "Adjutant Xuan is all right?" Bai Xuelan actually saw him earlier, but just now he was taking care of Xuan Dian and didn't say anything to Bai Yunfei. Seeing Bai Yunfei asking, a look of pain flashed across his face, and he whispered, "He must be auspicious. The German doctor is the best in treating gunshot wounds, and the medicine is complete." This is not so much for Bai Yunfei, rather than listening to yourself. Bai Yunfei is good at looking at people. Seeing Bai Xuelan's expression, he knows that Bai Xuelan is also in a panic, so he doesn't ask about his injuries, and only says, "I heard that waiting for surgery is very tortuous. And a knife is used inside." The people outside waited until their hearts were broken into several petals. In fact, most of them were frightening themselves. When the wounded came out from the inside, it would be clear of the dark clouds and the sky. It's just that Adjutant Xuan was injured. How will he take care of himself? I don't know if gunshot wounds should be avoided. But the ginseng soup is probably fine, but the real old wild ginseng is not easy to get. And the ones sold outside may not be authentic. Bai Xuelan knew that he was afraid, that he was thinking wildly and deliberately looking for something else. Let the time endure a little longer. And forced a smile. He wants to recover, let alone ginseng. I can get the moon in the sky. It's you. Why are you with Mrs. Nian today? Bai Yunfei said bluntly, "I have been teaching Mrs. Nian to sing for a while now, and I am very cared for by her. She gave me a gift in the past 2 days, so I went to the house to thank me." While at Nian's house, Mrs. Nian answered the phone. Said that there was an accident with Adjutant Xuan and he was sent to a German hospital. "Adjutant Xuan and I are also friends, so let's come and have a look." As he was talking, a man suddenly came from the other side of the corridor, walked in front of Xuan Dian, and said, "Madam, sir is not in the office." It turned out to be Nian House's driver. Xuan Dian asked, "What about the other 2 places you frequent? Are they not there? Did you go? During the daytime, your master should have time to do errands, right?" The driver said, "If you ask, everyone says they don't know, and they say that master is busy and never sees anyone." Xuan Dian also guessed after listening to the driver say this. Her pretty face was covered with a layer of frost, as if she was pressing her throat in one breath, but when she was about to open her mouth, she glanced at the closed operating room door in front of her. She seemed to let out a breath and sighed. With a sigh, she said, "Forget it, I won't have time to take care of him. Let him be happy." Zhang Mama said, "Alas, miss, how can this be done? After all, the young master is his brother-in-law. If such a big thing happened, it's time to take a look." Xuan Dian said, "Stop nagging, it gives me a headache." She closed her eyes again. Everyone continued to wait silently in the corridor. It seemed that the operation would never end, no matter how unbearable it was. The white door didn't move at all. After a while, someone came from the other side of the corridor. This time it was Adjutant's son, followed by 2 men in uniform. In a place like the hospital, knowing that Xuan Huaifeng was injured, Adjutant's son didn't dare to speak aloud. When he reached Bai Xuelan, he pressed his voice and asked, "Chief, Adjutant Xuan is still operating?" Bai Xuelan nodded heavily. Adjutant's son said, "Chief, the matter over the Jinghua building, the Prime Minister." He stopped halfway through, and in deep thought, he stepped aside and made way out. The 2 men in uniform at the back were the people from the Prime Minister's office. They walked up and saluted Bai Xuelan in a serious manner, and said, "Mr. Bai, the Prime Minister has instructed that there are some things he want to talk to you about." Please come over. Bai Xuelan said. Please go back to the Prime Minister and report to the two of you. I'll go there right away when this is over. The two of them looked at me and I looked at you, and one of them said, Mr. Pai, this is not good. Who does the Prime Minister want to see? And who doesn't go immediately? You can't let the Prime Minister wait. This is the Prime Minister's instruction, please don't make us embarrassed. Bai Xuelan's face sank, and he said coldly, It's even the Jade Emperor now, please don't move the Lord. These two people work for the Prime Minister, and they have always been very imposing. But Bai Xuelan's identity is special. And they don't dare to be too tough. Besides, they have heard about the Jinghua building incident that shook the whole city today. And they know that the chief in front of him is not a gentleman and is not easy to provoke. After thinking about it, they saluted and reported to the Prime Minister on his own. It was quiet again here. I don't know how long it took, and suddenly, a trace of voice seemed to float from the operating room. Everyone seemed to have been knocked on the forehead, and turned around to stare at the white door, but the movement there stopped again. Just when everyone thought it was another illusion, suddenly, the people in the operating room were slammed open. With such a force, as if the door was kicked open, and everyone was startled. Doctors and nurses clattered out of a bed surrounded by them. Xuan Huaifeng was in a hurry, and suddenly stood up from the chair, her legs softened, and she sat back again. Zhang Ma and Pai Yunfei hurried to help. Huaifeng. Bai Xuelan stepped up and desperately lowered his head to call. But Xuan Huaifeng closed his eyes and didn't know if he heard it. The nurse said, Please let us go, we are going to send the patient to the ward. Bai Xuelan, as if he had done something terrible, stepped aside nervously, turned around and stopped the German doctor who was following behind, and asked about Xuan Huaifeng's situation. The doctor said in half-baked Chinese, it didn't penetrate. Fortunately, it was embedded in the abdominal muscle layer. The bullet has been taken out. Xuan Huaifeng rushed in and asked, Will he get better? There won't be anything left on his body. Is there something wrong? The doctor said, This is just a minor injury. There's nothing wrong with it. As soon as he finished speaking, Xuan Huaifeng seemed to have lost all the weight of her body, but instead started to cry. Zhang Ma supported her, also covering her mouth and crying with joy. Pai Yunfei gently persuaded her. Bai Xuelan didn't care about others at this time, and followed him to the ward. Seeing that the nurse was about to move Xuan Huaifeng to a fixed bed, he wanted to help, but was rejected, so he stood aside and kept saying, Be careful. Be careful. You touched his wound. He just had an operation. The nurse saw how strong he was and didn't dare to be too rude, but she really hated him for being long-winded, so she glanced at him, and said, We know. After finally putting Xuan Huaifeng in place, the nurses were going to leave. Bai Xuelan was worried, grabbed a nurse's wrist and asked, Why did you leave? There should be a doctor to take care of it. Hurry up, call the doctor. Come here, the nurse said, the doctor is very busy. There are many injuries that are much more serious than this. And the doctor has not yet been called for special care. Adjutant's son said, Chief, she doesn't know your identity, so I'll look for it right away. The director of the hospital. I want him to arrange it. Bai Xuelan thought about it. A nurse didn't know anything. Even if Xuan Huaifeng was in any situation, he wouldn't be able to use it. So it would be better to arrange a doctor to come, and let the nurse go. Let adjutant's son handle it. He went to the bed to see Xuan Huaifeng. Unexpectedly, he walked to the head of the bed, looked around, and found that Xuan Huaifeng's eyelashes moved slightly. Bai Xuelan hurriedly called him, Huaifeng? Huaifeng? Xuan Huaifeng used morphine during the operation. When he woke up, he fainted, and he always heard various sounds that seemed to come from far away. Now, he heard Bai Xuelan's voice seem to be faintly nearby. He tried to open his eyes a little, and after a while, he found the face in his field of vision, and hummed softly. When Bai Xuelan heard his chirping, which was as thin as a mosquito, it was like a light suddenly shot from a pitch-black hell. And he was moved to tears in an instant. His chest was full, and he didn't dare to speak and shout loudly, for fear of letting go of the joy of rebirth. He softened his voice, lowered his head, pressed his face against Xuan Huaifeng, and asked, "Does the wound still hurt?" Xuan Huaifeng seemed a little sluggish because of the medicine on his body. Said, "It doesn't hurt. It's just sleepy." Bai Xuelan said, "If you're sleepy, just sleep."